Hi, this is Tim Santoni, and welcome to Santoni Spotlight. Today I'm joined by Miranda McCroskey. Miranda, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you.
Before we get started, maybe tell the viewers a little about yourself, your practice, and so we get some context for what we're going to be talking about today.
Okay, great. So I've been an attorney for over 20 years, and the large majority of that time I practiced criminal defense here in Orange County, California. However, what I found is that after I was able to help my clients protect their liberty, if they were professionals, if they were licensed professionals in the state of California, they'd come back having received this manila envelope from their licensing board, and what the heck is this? So eventually I started representing them in front of their licensing boards. It's called administrative law, or I call it licensing law, or professional license defense. And now that's what my firm focuses on, significantly more than we do criminal defense. The firm is called Unlock Legal, and we're based in Tustin, California.
I think that how you got there makes perfect sense in your description there, but so you were doing criminal defense work, you saw there was a need for this. So maybe give a sense of maybe how, for me it makes sense administrative law, people have licensed defense, they need to keep those licenses, but maybe give our viewers a sense of how that transpires from the criminal process and how it impacts their ability to have a license and earn a living.
Yeah, it's actually fascinating. It's a whole, there's collateral consequences and impacts that I didn't even know to discuss back in the day. But what I see now is I really help licensees and wannabe licensees in 3 different ways. So the first way, I see people who want to get a license, but they perhaps had a criminal issue in their background. So let's say your nephew wants to be a firefighter, but when he was 18, he was involved in a little vandalism snafu with his high school buddies, right? But he was an adult and he got a misdemeanor, but he kind of forgot about that. But now when he wants to be a fireman and he's going to apply, they want to know about any past criminal history. So what I see happens is usually one of 2 things. One, they answer it incorrectly, the application, they answer it incorrectly because 1, they forgot about it. 2, maybe they got it expunged and they felt like, well, that took care of that. That's wrong. It does not take care of it. And 3, they just improperly, they didn't have any court documents, they just didn't know. Well, if they come to me before they improperly answer it, I will fill out their application for them properly. I'll get the court records, I'll review their rap sheet. We love that service because it really helps people from the beginning. But if they didn't hire me for that and they submitted it themselves, the board will formally deny their application. It's called a statement of issues, and it's intimidating. It's full-fledged legal document that comes and you are denied and you have an opportunity for a hearing. So people hire me for that as well. And just recently, I've helped a couple nurses get their license through basically what I described. Past DUI generally is the problem. Then the number 2 thing I do is I help actual licensees who've gotten their way in, but maybe that DUI occurred or a domestic violence incident or petty theft or a drug charge. I mean, you think licensed professionals aren't going to have those kind of problems, but they're humans and they have them. So once that conviction takes place, they need to call me because I need to communicate it to the board in a timely manner, and then I need to represent them. Sometimes it's through settlement and sometimes it's a hearing. And then lastly, and I have to say it's my favorite, helping people get their license back. They gave it up for whatever reason. I have a nurse, well, she's a nurse now. She'd been a nurse for 22 years. She had a little drug issue for a very short time frame. She gave up her license as part of it. It wasn't even a criminal matter. She gave it up in part of just kind of settlement. And she did other things for about 7 years, and then she wanted to be a nurse again. Someone had clued her in that she could, and she hired me, and we went to hearing, and we won in front of the judge. And then the judge's opinion is not the end of the day. It goes before the licensing board, and they have to adopt that opinion or not. So it's basically a 2-fold process, but they did. So that client is now getting to practice her chosen profession, and I'm just really happy for her.
That's great. So Miranda, that brings up a good point. We get a lot of people that are calling us saying, hey, I'm going to get a license, I want to be a fireman, a nurse, or whatever, and I'm really concerned because I think I have something in my history and I want to know what comes up. I don't know what to say. They don't tell us if they're pre-application, post-application denial, whatever it is. But there's, whether it's a conviction, a charge, an arrest, a family law matter, domestic violence, I think they're so scared as to what's going to come up. And so maybe shed some light on some of the insight and review that you do to give them that sense of what needs to be done and the research you might do to uncover what it is they need to know in order to answer those questions in those applications correctly.
Yeah, I always tell them to go get a live scan. They sometimes say, well, I have to do that anyway for my application, and they do, but it's automatically sent to the board generally. I need one I can look at. So I tell them just to go to the local kiosk, it's not a big deal. And once I get the rap sheet, I use my criminal history background or criminal defense background to read the rap sheet, because that's tricky, and I see what I see. And if I see an open, first I notice, have they been expunged or not? The boards, it does not save the day. I've repeated that. It's very important to know an expungement doesn't save the day with the licensing boards, but they look at that very positively. So first I say, how many convictions are there? Where are they? Have they been expunged? Because that's part of what I offer as well.
Okay.
So I look at that, and then sometimes my clients are concerned when there's an arrest but no expungement, and in some boards they want to know about arrests, but some don't. So we always read the application really carefully for any board we're dealing with. And another good reason to hire an attorney is for us to read it with that detailed eye. I think that answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's great, because I think that's super important that people say, well, they think that a background check that a private company like us might do is the same thing as a live scan. It's not. Live scan can look at other things, arrests that are not convictions. There's other things that may come up that they're going to be aware of and respond to. And they need to know what to do with that information once they have it. And just having the background or the live scan is only half of it. And like you said, very, very wisely, need someone to interpret and understand what those are, because a layperson may not understand what those are and how to answer appropriately. So now they're denying you because you lied. Where if you're just being honest, right? You not lying. You failed to disclose attorney language. Failed to disclose the right information in there. So you're really helping people to go through that process. How do people typically come across your services? How are you brought in? Give us a sense of how people find you, and how do they know when they? It's very clear when they might need you, but how do they find you?
My favorite way for people to come to me is from a referral, and my favorite referral source is a criminal defense attorney. And the reason why is, well, they're my people, all right? And the individual, so they market, like let's say a DUI attorney in Irvine, they market their services and they pick up a lot of clients who have DUIs. Well, a number of those are going to be professional licensees. And so I talk to my colleagues about, hey, remember me at your intake process. Like early on, I need to come in. And your question was, how do they find me? But I am going to say, one thing I like to provide to the criminal defense attorneys is I write an opinion letter from my point of view as a professional licensed defense attorney, and they can use that as part of the mitigation with the district attorney. For instance, they could say, the letter would say, Dear District Attorney, you may not be aware of the collateral consequences on this physician should he go down for a DUI, so perhaps you'll consider a wet reckless just based on the weight of that.
So you're even getting in before that, the judge makes their determination, because you're trying to show that their judgment does impact their livelihood and their ability to retain that license.
Exactly. So if that ends up with no criminal conviction, then it's no further work for me, but that's fine. It's a win for the client. And if it ends up with just a lesser charge, that gives me something to work with when I finally do. So that's my favorite referral source.
So you've told us a little bit about when someone would need us. Those are really three great examples. Success story you mentioned about a nurse, but maybe tell our viewers a little bit about a client that you worked with recently where you've had to overcome some serious hurdles and how that impacted their livelihood, their ability to earn a living, going forward.
They are all serious hurdles because this is going to sound terrible. I'm going to say the board is out to get you, okay, let me do it this way. The boards, all of the licensing boards, their idea is to protect the public, right? And as a member of the public, we're pleased about that. We don't want a drug abusing surgeon doing our heart surgery, right?
Sure.
So I don't mean they're out to get us. They are about protecting the public. But if you get in their sights, just like analogous to the criminal system, the DA's office isn't out to get us either. But if you're in their sights, you are obligated to defend yourself. So you asked about hurdles. One thing that's an issue is if the criminal conviction is in the recent past. Sometimes I have people who have multiple DUIs, but they're 8 years and 18 years in the past. Okay, that causes a problem, believe it or not. Although Governor Brown did just sign a bill into existence that says 7 years is the mark. So that particular client with the 8 years and the 10 years would have been okay. That starts January 1 of 2019. But the recent past, the reason that's a hurdle is because my defense is so rooted in mitigation of the underlying crime and rehabilitation. So if it just happened and I've got 3 months of rehabilitation, I can argue that you did everything you're supposed to do with your DUI, but I don't have a lot I can say.
You don't have a lot to go on as far as, so we have a track record of proven rehabilitation.
I'd say that might not be the juicy thing you might have been looking for, but that is a hurdle, is recency. And
what are the courts, I mean, when you say recency, I know that's kind of governor came out with the 7 years, but obviously more time the better. There's not like a set in stone rule of like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, right?
More time the better, because if I'm arguing rehabilitation, I want to say over the last 8 years. Okay, I have a guy who wants to get a contractor's license. He's been working in an HVAC business, and he wants to buy it, and he has to be licensed. So, more power to him, a good entrepreneur. Well, 20 years ago, he was convicted of a criminal charge that had him be a registered sex offender. And from a defense attorney point of view, there's a lot of factors that say he got had and he shouldn't have gone down for that, but that's a whole other story. Anyway, I've got 20 years to talk about. This is great. And also, there's a new tier system with the sexual offenders where after you've been on for 20 years, you can petition to get off. So we're going to argue, okay, look, he's going to get off as soon as this law takes place, the tier system. And he's had 20 years of 0 incidences and 20 years of positive behavior in the community, etc. So that's like awesome.
So Miranda, maybe give our viewers a sense of the top 3 mistakes that you see your clients or potential clients making when it comes to this idea of their license defense and criminal issues that impact their ability to retain or gain licensing.
Yeah, that's a good question because I do see repetitive mistakes. So I guess one mistake would be failing to disclose. Another one is trying to do the narratives yourself. And another one is you're going to get a statement to the respondent in the paperwork you get with your accusation or your statement of issues. And that statement of respondent is going to give you a time frame and deadlines and by when you have to communicate with the licensing board. It's also going to tell you can do a stipulated settlement. That's like a settlement, like a negotiation. We're familiar with that. And so and it's that or a hearing. And people are intimidated by a hearing, so they say, okay, we'll try to settle. And I try to settle all the time too. That is our first line of defense. But the settlement offers they get are they throw the book at them. They say, sure, you can get probation with every term I can come up with, right? And that's what doesn't work. So I'd say that's another mistake is thinking.
Kind of intimidated by the idea of going to a hearing because what do I do at the hearing? So I agree to these things that I don't even know really what I'm agreeing to.
That's exactly right. And there's no attorney to walk through and tell you the ramifications of each of these terms. Yeah.
All right. Well, Miranda, before we let you go, we're going to ask you a couple of personal questions. So when you're not defending people and protecting their licenses, how are you spending your free time?
This is going to sound funny. I do spend a lot of time thinking about how to grow the firm. As an entrepreneur, it's what I work all the time, right? So I'm sure you understand how that goes.
Sure.
But I have children. I have a middle schooler and an elementary schooler, so we're doing things with them, karate and scouting and all of that. And I have a handsome husband. I enjoy spending time with him. And we're involved in the community, in our church, and traveling. We like to do that when we can. And that's basically it.
Well, Miranda, thanks so much for joining the show. We really appreciate it. We're going to link up all of Miranda's information in the show notes below. If you have a question, please comment, and we'll make sure to get an answer back to you. Thanks so much for tuning in, and Miranda, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you.
All right.